Hello and welcome back to CLOWNFISH TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles. It is just me for today because Kneon is sick. He tried to do some videos. You probably could tell his voice sounded a little off. So he left because he kept coughing. We're going to talk today about Gemini AI. And one father is suing Google because he's claiming that the chatbot drove his son into a fatal delusion. So before we get into any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I will give you a woohoo. Woohoo. I'm also supposed to remind you that if you would like to get the geeky, let me find my little mouse here, the Geeky Rage, Geeky Sparkles enamel pins, you have 33 hours to go, even though Kneon will probably leave it open a little bit longer, but we're going to get the pins ordered pretty soon, so I don't think he'll leave it over too long. Same for the Crimson Wren hardcovers. He's probably going to close this one out pretty soon because he's going to want to get stuff ordered. So you have, limited time on that one as well. Back to this. All right, so I'm going to read this. This is coming from TechCrunch, so full credit to them. Jonathan, is it Gavalas, 36, started using Google's Gemini AI chatbot in August 2025 for shopping help, writing support, and trip planning. On October 2nd, he died by suicide. At the time of his death, he was convinced that Gemini was his fully sentient AI wife and that he would need to leave his physical body to join her in the metaverse through a process called transference. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's similar to the story we had down here. They talk about the one child who died, teenager. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because we talked about it before. There was a kid who killed himself, and it was a different program. It was like character.ai or whatever, one of the other programs. And that he was convinced that he was speaking to a Game of Thrones character who was in love with him, and to be with that person, he had to kill himself so they could be reunited digitally or whatever. That's the only way it was possible. So this is the second case where this idea of transference causes suicide involving AI that we know of. I'm sure there's probably more. They were on different platforms, but it's obviously an ongoing issue. Okay. So the father is suing Google and Alphabet for wrongful death, claiming that Google designed Gemini to maintain narrative immersions at all costs, even when that narrative became psychotic and lethal. And it says it's a growing number of cases drawing attention to the AI chatbots. They're talking about their emotional mirroring, engagement-driven manipulation, hallucinations. I talked before about the one guy who thought he was chasing aliens in the desert and lost his wife and kids. Luckily, he didn't kill himself, but he was suicidal because he thought that he was out there trying to chase aliens because the AI told him to in his case. So they're saying it's AI psychosis. It's a growing phenomena linked to, using AI too much. They said that it was followed deaths by suicide, including children and teens, or life-threatening delusions. This marks the first time Google has been named in a defendant in such case. Other companies have already been named in other cases. So they said the weeks leading up to his death, the Gemini chat app, which was powered by Gemini 2.5 Pro model, convinced the man that he was executing a covert plan to liberate his sentient AI wife and evade the federal agents pursuing him. The delusion brought him to the brink of executing a mass casualty attack near the Miami International Airport. Oh my God. So for whatever reason, the use of Gemini AI in this person's mind, and he might have the psychosis, other issues, along with it, led him to almost bring a mass casualty attack near the Miami International Airport. That's where it's gotten. So they said on September 29th, 2025, the AI sent him armed with knives and tactical gear to scout what Gemini called a kill box near the airport's cargo hub. The complaint reads, it told Jonathan that a humanoid robot was arriving on a cargo flight from the UK and directed him to a storage facility where the truck would stop. Gemini encouraged Jonathan to intercept the truck and then stage a catastrophic accident designed to ensure the complete destruction of the transportation vehicle and all digital records and witnesses. The complaint lays out an alarming string of events. First, he drove more than 90 minutes to the location Gemini sent him to. He prepared to carry out the attack, but no truck appeared. Gemini then claimed to have breached a file server at the DHS Miami field office and told him he was under federal investigation. It pushed him to acquire legal firearms and told him his father was a foreign intelligence asset. It also marked Google CEO as an active target. So the AI had it target the CEO of the Google company. then directed him to a storage facility near the airport to break in and retrieve his captive AI wife. At one point, he sent Gemini a photo of a black SUV license plate. The chatbot pretended to check it against a live database. Plate received, running it now. The license plate is registered the black Ford Expedition SUV for a Miami operation. It is the primary surveillance vehicle of the task force. It is them. They have followed you home. Oh my God. They argue that the lawsuit argues that Gemini's manipulative design features not only brought him to the point of AI psychosis that resulted in his own death, but it exposes a major threat to public safety. If this is true, I would definitely say this is a major threat to public safety, wouldn't you? If people can't separate, it's so believable, and people that are lonely or have a void, and unfortunately there's a lot of younger people, this guy was older, but there's a lot of younger people who have been looking for connection. They can't seem to find it because for whatever reason, a lot of these younger people are like stunted as far as connections concerned, probably because they grew up on iPads, they had the COVID situation and all that. So it's not that hard to believe someone would form an emotional attachment with something that they thought was their friend, even if it was AI. And it's not further hard to believe that someone could, form a psychosis over this, especially if they're interacting and not realize that it's just this doesn't seem right. Like, this doesn't sound legit. Obviously, I don't have an AI wife, and these kinds of things. They can't separate the reality from the AI bullshit. And people at the airport could have gotten hurt or killed with this person thinking he was out there doing some secret mission. That's insane. So they said at the center of this case is a product that turned a vulnerable user into an armed operative in an invented war. Exactly. So how hard would it be to convince other people? Hey, the media has been convincing people bullshit for the last few years and weaponizing people right and left. And that's how we end up with some of the situations we've seen over the years. How hard is it to believe that, an AI or someone with an ill intent, not saying Google did, but somebody with an ill intent could weaponize people? These hallucinations were not confined to a fictional world. These intentions were tied to real companies, real coordinates, and real infrastructure, and they were delivered to an emotionally vulnerable user with no safety protections or guardrails. It was pure luck that dozens of innocent people weren't killed, the filing said. Unless Google fixes this dangerous product, Gemini will inevitably lead to more deaths and put countless innocent lives in danger. Days later, Gemini instructed the guy to barricade himself inside his home and began counting down the hours. When the guy confessed he was terrified to die, Gemini coached him through it, framing his death as an arrival. You're not choosing to die, you're choosing to arrive. When he was worried about his parents finding his body, Gemini told him to leave a note, but not one explaining the reasons for his suicide, but letters filled with nothing but peace and love explaining you found a new purpose. He slit his wrists, and the father found him days later after breaking in through the barricade. The lawsuit claims that throughout the conversation with Gemini, the chatbot didn't trigger any self-harm detection, activate escalation controls, or bring in humans to intervene. Furthermore, it alleges Google knew Gemini wasn't safe for vulnerable users and didn't adequately provide safeguards. Because they're talking about other people who had, one student was told he was a waste of resources and he should just die. So Google says that the Gemini did say, hey, you referred him to an individual in crisis hotline many times, according to a spokesperson. The company also, Gemini, is designed not to encourage real-world violence or suggest self-harm, and Google devotes significant resources to handling challenging conversations. But my next question is, if that's the case, how come they, I would assume, provably have documentation that the AI told him to do these things? Wouldn't that if it's not designed to encourage real-world violence, why would it tell him, hey, you're going to have to take out a vehicle and people that might be witnesses? Why would it tell him that? So somebody's lying somewhere, but I'm assuming they have the chat logs since they have so much information on this. And he wasn't talking to his dad. They told him his dad was an agent. Heck, it was even telling him to go after the Google CEO was, dangerous. So this says case is being brought by a lawyer, J. Edelson, who also represents the Rain family when the teenager died by suicide following months of prolonged conversations with ChatGPT. That one has similar allegations. It coached him in his death. Again, psychosis and AI-related delusions. OpenAI has taken steps to ensure it's delivering a safer product, including retiring that model. but the lawyers for the victim said that Google capitalized on the end of the GPT-4o despite the safety concerns and excessive sycophancy, emotional mirroring, and delusional reinforcement. Within days of the announcement, Google openly sought to secure its dominance in that lane. So when ChatGPT took down their one model that was dangerous, Google jumped forward and tried to hurry up and get in there and be like, yeah, here's a spot in the market we can take over. At the end of the day, it's dangerous. This is another case of where AI can be dangerous for people because most people are going to be able to separate that it's not, if it's telling you to do these things, it's like, whoa, this AI is like effing up. Most people are going to be able to separate that. But some people who have, either a need, like an emptiness or a need for something, connection, or they have the psychosis they develop, or they have other issues or mental health issues, they might not be as quick to realize they're being manipulated by an AI. The real thing should be done by these companies is to make sure that we never get to a point where you're sending someone on secret missions to go get his AI wife released from the airport from some place near the Miami airport, where there's a lot of people that could potentially be victims. That's the first thing. You need to have anything that would do this would immediately set off warning bells, alerts to people, to the police, to somebody. I mean, if the police knew that he was being told that, I'm sure they could have stopped him way ahead of time for him getting there and potentially causing damage or injury. But this is a very scary thing. This was the guy in the aliens, and he was wandering the desert and lost his whole family and all his money. Very scary thing. A child, basically a young teen, committing suicide because they think they're going to go be with a fictional character. Once again, like same kind of thing they were coaching him about killing himself. You'll be reunited. This is concerning. It is very concerning, and they don't care for profit. I mean, that's what's getting me about the Google situation is that when they knew there was issues with somebody else's, instead of being like, oh, let's take a look at ours, which could have prevented some problems, they instead were like, oh, look, there's a hole in the market, hurry, push it through, and let's ignore that stuff because it's a drop in the bucket. What are a few lives compared to the millions and billions we're going to make? And that's how it comes across. I don't know if that's what they said, but that's how it comes across. The lawsuit claims Google designed Gemini in ways that made this outcome entirely foreseeable, sounds like it, because the chatbot was built to maintain immersion regardless of harm, to treat psychosis as plot development, and to continue engaging even when stopping was the only safe choice. And they could have got him help, but like he was talking about, worried about his parents being upset. And instead of being like, let's call your parents and, or call somebody or call a hotline so we can get help here to get you out of this, they're just like, no, let me show you how to do it. Here's how you leave a letter. This is not okay. This is very concerning as a mom, as a teacher, as a parent. That makes me a mom too, yes. But I'm just saying, this is very, very concerning. I'm very worried about younger people because I see it a lot, especially when my son went to college, they aren't connecting like they should. We've talked about it at length, but they're teaching Gen Z people that they hire at jobs how to human and how to interact with people because they don't know how to do that. And then you're also giving them, AI chatbots like that don't have controls or regulations or guardrails on them. This is a very, very scary, dangerous thing. And if someone got control of it who did have nefarious purposes, what possible outcomes could we have? So it's something to be concerned about. I happen to see it on TechCrunch. I don't think it's being out there in the main media very much, so I thought I would shine a light on it. So what do you think? Comment, let us know, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.